Caleb Williams, not even a question. Number one quarterback talent-wise within the conference. However, when it comes to quarterback depth, and this is what this argument is about, if something, God forbid, happens to Caleb Williams, they have literally one guy behind him, and that's Miller Moss. Miller Moss is a guy that, had a lot of offers from Southern California, very good quarterback, but he's got, 15 career pass attempts to his name. So when you only have two quarterbacks in your depth, that's going to naturally knock you down a few places. And despite how talented both of those guys can be, Miller Moss was, for some recruiting services, a top 100 recruit, top 10 quarterback recruit in the country coming there to SC. I can't have them as high as the other two teams because they've just got more options if shit hits the fan. So for me, USC would have to rank as the number 3 team, despite everything I've just said about Caleb Williams and how high I am on this kid coming to USC. I know this is very unfortunate as Bruin fans, but Caleb Williams is that guy. And as soon as they got Lincoln and as soon as they got Caleb, for me, it was very tough to stomach that. I still think UCLA can beat them this year. If we can beat them this year, maybe we can carry that trajectory moving forward into the Big Ten, into things like that. I do think Chip has really found an area of great stuff. But USC with Caleb Williams is going to be a scary, scary proposition. The number 2 team that I've got, and it's the team that a lot of people are picking to take the Pac-12 outright this year, and that's Utah. And I think the it factor of quarterbacks, it's hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. That's what I would say about the it factor when it comes to the quarterback room. And Cam Rising, what he did for Utah last year, with how the season started for the Utes, Cam Rising has that it factor. So week 1, I'll take you back. Week 1, Utah loses an embarrassing loss to BYU, a team they despise. That is their state rival. They dislike them a great deal. Charlie Brewer is the quarterback transfer from Baylor. Lots of experience. Cam Rising actually lost the job in fall camp. Brewer comes out again the next week against San Diego State, lays a dud. This is a team that's not even a Power 5 school, San Diego State. They insert Cam Rising. They're down big on the road at San Diego State. And it was just like a snap of the fingers. Cam Rising comes in and made play after play after play and took them to triple overtime against San Diego State. After that game, the quarterback competition was finished. Cam Rising was the guy, and he delivered on that. Final 10 games of the season within Pac-12 play, went 9-1 over that span, throwing for 20 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions, completing 64% of his throws. Cam Rising ignited the fire for the Utah Utes in a way that we haven't seen in a long time in Pac-12 play. Probably since Sam Darnold, if we're being honest, what Cam Rising did for Utah. And when people call him just a great passer, this guy had nearly 500 yards rushing on 74 attempts last year. That's 6.7 yards a carry. And maybe if he's healthy to end that Rose Bowl game, he got injured on one of the drives in the second half. It ultimately cost them the game, potentially, with Ohio State coming out and winning in the final seconds on a game-winning field goal. So Cam Rising, I think, is a guy that you have to put near the top, especially with how he's positioned Utah moving forward into next year. A team that, I've seen some AP polls. I've seen them as high as 7 on some of this. That's competing for a playoff spot. Cam Rising has to be there. And the guy's backing him up, by the way. This is a QB depth chart argument. When I look at backup quarterbacks, I look for the situation they played in. And when Rising went down in the Rose Bowl of last year, the guy that stepped up was a walk-on quarterback named Bryson Barnes. Ohio State had just taken the lead up 7 in the second half. Utah had just blown a big lead. Everyone in their right mind goes, this kid's a walk-on. He's not going to be able to make big plays. We've pretty much blown this game ourselves. Bryson Barnes led Utah on a drive that should be for a Disney movie. Led them on the drive, tied the game with a beautiful pass in the end zone. He was 2 of 2 through the air for that drive, 23 yards, that touchdown pass to tie the game for Utah. And what I look at with backups and people is how they respond in big games played. If they do get inserted into a big game, how do they react? How do they make things roll? There was no bigger situation for a Utah quarterback to enter the game. That was their first Rose Bowl ever. They're playing against Ohio State. The game is on the line, and Barnes stepped up and delivered. That gives me confidence as a fan, knowing that if he can do it in the Rose Bowl, he can do it anywhere. So Bryson Barnes and that performance, helped Utah get that second spot on this list. And you throw that in with a guy that wasn't really healthy a lot of last year, but a guy that made plays, Quinton Jackson. And he is up there for me in terms of the best dual threat quarterbacks speed-wise, when it comes within the Pac-12. Quinton Jackson has wheels for days. And what they can use Quinton Jackson is packages like they used with him against Washington State last year. 4 carries, 21 yards, got in the end zone. So as a red zone threat to just kind of throw off the defense, you can implement a guy like Quinton Jackson there. That makes your quarterback room that much more dangerous when you can have those gadget-like quarterback plays to throw the defense off even more from the scent of what you're actually trying to do. So when you combine the likes of Cam Rising having the it factor, arguably being the best quarterback for maybe a Pac-12 team, best returning quarterback. Caleb Williams wasn't in the Pac-12, so Cam Rising, best returning quarterback. There's a case to be made there. And then when you throw in what Bryson Barnes did when the lights were the brightest at the Rose Bowl as a backup, got to rank them up the list. And then you throw in the Quinton Jackson, gadget into the mix, I've got to rank them number 2. And Bruin fans, this is where we can collectively celebrate an on-paper win, because this is my opinion. I'm not being biased. I really believe this in my heart of hearts. I think UCLA, from top to bottom, we may not have the best individual quarterback, even though there's a case to be made about that, has the best quarterback room within the Pac-12. And it starts with our guy DTR. He's coming into his 5th year of starting experience. He was PFF's highest graded quarterback within the Pac-12 last year. And just to kind of rattle off some stats for what Dorian Thompson Robinson was able to do, he led UCLA to the highest scoring offense within the Pac-12. Individual rankings, he led the conference in total touchdowns, was first in adjusted passing yards, and second in total yards as a quarterback. And yes, he did improve the turnover ratio from last year. 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He was great. But where he really turned a corner was he started to gain intelligence as a runner and what that does to the defense moving forward. 609 yards on the ground as a quarterback for UCLA, led all quarterbacks in running last year, and he got 9 touchdowns on the ground, combining for 30 total touchdowns. This is his 5th year entering a Chip Kelly offense. Dorian Thompson Robinson is as comparable as a starter as you can find. If you want to argue straight up if he's better than Cam Rising and Caleb Williams, that's a separate argument. But I think Dorian Thompson Robinson is among that top 3, in terms of making plays in the college football world. So Dorian Thompson Robinson is your starter coming in there. Ethan Garbers, we just talked about what Bryson Barnes did coming in for Utah in the Rose Bowl game. Bryson Barnes performed as solidly in one of the more hostile environments on the road against a great team against Utah. And 27 of 44 through the air, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. You go, Will, hey, UCLA lost a blowout to, Utah on the road. We did not lose that game because of Ethan Garbers. We lost that game because our defense was miserable, to say the least. We allowed 290 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns, with 3 backs going for over 60-plus yards, including Tavion Thomas, who was well above the 150 threshold. So if you're going to allow that run game where you can essentially do whatever you want on the ground, it doesn't matter how good of a quarterback you have in the college football ranks. You got to score every time you touch the ball, and that's nearly what Utah was doing.